Prehistoric deserts were not places meant for human survival. They were traps designed by nature itself. Blistering heat by day, bone-chilling cold by night, and horizons so empty they played tricks on the mind. There were no second chances. Here, a missed step, a wrong direction, or a single lost drop of water could mean the end. Most of us today would collapse within hours, yet our ancestors faced these landscapes head-on, carving paths across wastelands that seemed determined to erase them. How they managed it, what dangers they overcame, and why anyone would dare to enter such places, I will uncover step by step as we move forward. Prehistoric deserts were not lifeless seas of sand. They were arenas of survival, vast and merciless landscapes that demanded everything from those who dared to cross them. Picture yourself under a burning sun, the air so hot it scalds your lungs, the ground beneath your feet radiating heat like fire. Each dune stretching higher than the last, as if the earth itself wanted to trap you in its golden prison. In these ancient deserts, the horizon was never a promise but a lie, shimmering with illusions of water that pulled the thirsty farther into danger, only to leave them gasping in disappointment. The days were brutal, with temperatures soaring, high enough to dehydrate the strongest within hours, stripping away strength until every step became heavier than the last, while the nights reversed the cruelty, plunging into icy cold that sank deep into the bones, leaving travelers shivering. Under starlight that offered no warmth, only the reminder of how small and fragile they truly were. Yet the weather was only one enemy, because the deserts of prehistory were alive with predators, giant hyenas lurking in the shadows of rocky outcrops, their jaws strong enough to crush bones, saber-tooth cats whose glowing eyes pierced the darkness stalking the edges of firelight, venomous snakes hidden beneath the sands, waiting with patience until one careless step sealed a fate. Even insects, swarms of biting flies and desert scorpions, made survival a constant battle. And then there was the desert itself, shifting and treacherous, where violent sandstorms rose without warning, walls of dust so thick they turned day into night, stripping skin, clogging lungs, and erasing tracks, until the land itself seemed determined to bury the living along with the dead. Navigation was a nightmare. No maps, no compass, only the fragile memory of distant landmarks, the stars above, and the faint trails of migrating herds that sometimes led to safety, but just as often led to death. Water was the rarest treasure of all, and those who failed to read the signs of hidden springs or dig deep into the earth for secret pools did not last long. Food was no less scarce, forcing early humans to risk hunting desert-adapted creatures or scavenging bones left behind by larger predators. To most of us today, even a single day in such conditions would be unbearable. Yet our ancestors crossed these wastelands with nothing but instinct, resilience, and the will to survive. They learned to craft primitive tools sharp enough to dig through dry earth, to follow the flight of birds that often revealed hidden oases, to track the faint hoofprints of antelope or gazelle that led to precious waterholes. Still, even when survival seemed possible, the desert attacked the mind. Loneliness, disorientation, and despair gnawed at the spirit, voices echoing in the silence until the very air seemed haunted. To endure this required more than strength. It required imagination, cooperation, and rituals that gave purpose to the suffering. These prehistoric deserts were more than landscapes. They were crucibles, shaping humanity itself, burning away the weak and forcing the survivors to evolve into something stronger. And this, as harsh as it already sounds, is only the first glimpse into their reality. Because as we move forward, I will reveal how these deserts did not just test the body, but forged the very foundations of human culture, belief, and survival in ways we are only beginning to understand. Surviving the vast and unforgiving prehistoric deserts was nothing less than a trial by fire, where every grain of sand seemed like an enemy, and every horizon shimmered with illusions designed to betray hope. For early humans, to step into these desolate landscapes was to enter a battlefield where the opponent was not a rival tribe or a hungry predator alone, but the desert itself, an endless sea of shifting dunes, searing days, and nights so cold they froze the marrow of bone. To survive here meant mastering secrets carved not in books, but in the land, passed down in whispers from one generation to the next, secrets that turned barren wastelands into maps of hidden resources for those clever enough to see them. Water. The most precious treasure of all was often buried deep beneath the earth, and groups learned to scrape with sharpened stone blades at dry riverbeds until tiny streams seeped upward like veins of life. Others followed herds of elephants or antelope, knowing instinctively that such creatures could not wander far without drinking, and sometimes they risked everything to claim muddy pools where crocodiles lay in wait. Even when water was secured, it came with a cruel bargain. Too little and death by thirst stalked the group. Too much, and stagnant pools carried disease that could sweep away the weak. Food was no less of a gamble, for hunting across this landscape was not the heroic pursuit we imagine, but a desperate and dangerous art, where hunters crept barefoot across burning sands, crude spears clutched tight, waiting for a chance to ambush wild asses or gazelle whose speed could make or break the fate of an entire clan. Scavengers learned another deadly lesson. Sometimes survival meant following the vultures, creeping close to the rotting remains abandoned by lions or saber-tooth cats, always risking the chance that the predators had not yet gone. Even small meals mattered. Insects roasted on fire, bitter desert roots pulled from dry soil, or lizards caught under rocks. Every scrap counted, every bite a victory. Yet fire itself was both a blessing and a burden. It roasted food, it kept hyenas and saber-tooth cats at bay, and its glow reassured tired souls huddled together under endless skies. But it had to be carried carefully, ember by ember, across miles of sand where striking new flames was often impossible. But the greatest danger was not hunger, thirst, or predators. It was the desert's crushing silence, a silence so heavy it could unravel the human mind, twisting time and space until even the strongest felt lost in endless emptiness. To fight this invisible enemy, humans created meaning through ritual. They gathered at night, their voices rising in chants under a sky overflowing with stars, rhythm binding them together when fear and despair threatened to tear them apart. They painted symbols on rocks and bones, signs that might have been prayers for rain, protections against unseen spirits, or codes of memory meant to teach children where to find water or when to travel. These rituals were not luxuries, they were lifelines. For without belief, courage crumbled, and in the desert, hesitation was death. Still, no ritual could stop the sandstorms that rose without warning, walls of dust so thick they turned day into night, swallowing everything in their path and erasing footprints that had guided generations. Entire groups vanished this way, their skeletons buried beneath dunes that shifted like restless oceans, erasing all memory of their passing. Yet those who survived carried forward more than scars. They carried knowledge. They remembered the directions of stars that never failed, the rare shrubs whose roots hid moisture, the behavior of animals that betrayed hidden springs. They passed these lessons through stories told around campfires, chants repeated across generations, rituals reenacted so that no one would forget. These strategies became the backbone of human endurance, shaping not only how people survived deserts, but how they learned to face uncertainty everywhere. Even today, echoes of these ancient lessons still linger among nomadic tribes who cross Africa, Arabia, and Central Asia, reading the desert like a book, following stars with the same trust their ancestors once had, practicing rituals that tie them to those who walked thousands of years before. The prehistoric desert, then, was more than just a barren expanse. It was a crucible, a harsh teacher that burned away weakness and forged resilience, intelligence, and community. It tested cooperation, demanded imagination, and pushed humans how to innovate in ways that would later define civilizations. And yet, this is not the full story, because while deserts threatened to kill our ancestors, they also shaped their destiny. These harsh landscapes that seemed like prisons were, in truth, paradoxical gateways, pathways that guided migrations, channels that carried early humans out of Africa and across the world. How could such deadly wastelands become the very roads of survival and expansion? That is the mystery I will reveal as we move into the next part of our journey, where the desert is no longer just an enemy, but a hidden ally that shaped the course of human history. The deserts of prehistory, which at first glance appeared as merciless wastelands bent on destroying all who entered, were in truth paradoxical gateways that shaped the very destiny of humankind. For while their burning days and freezing nights pushed people to the edge of survival, they also carved the hidden routes of migration that carried our ancestors out of Africa and into the wider world. Imagine small groups standing at the edge of endless dunes, driven forward not by choice, but by collapsing climates and vanishing rivers, forced to follow the stars, the flight of birds, and the seasonal tracks of herds across arid corridors, where one wrong step meant death. And yet those who endured carried more than scars. They carried memory, mapping invisible highways across generations through chants, rituals, and stories that kept alive the knowledge of hidden springs and sacred landmarks. In these crucibles of survival, humans forged cooperation, learned to share resources, strengthened bonds through chants and painted symbols, and elevated leaders, healers, and visionaries who turned suffering into meaning until the very hardships of the desert became lessons in resilience, imagination, and unity. And even as sandstorms swallowed entire groups and dunes erased all trace of their existence, those who survived transformed deserts from prisons into bridges, their footsteps stretching toward Asia, Europe, and beyond. More than mere landscapes, deserts became spiritual teachers, their silence birthing rituals and beliefs that tied survival to the sacred, reminding humans that endurance without purpose was impossible, and so myths, prayers, and visions rose from the emptiness like water from hidden wells. And here lies the great paradox. The same deserts that devoured the weak gave birth to strength, shaping migration, belief, and the spread of humanity itself, proving that these barren seas of sand were not the end of the road, but the beginning of our global story. And how these pathways of survival became highways of destiny is the ultimate revelation of prehistory. When we look back at the deserts of prehistory, we no longer see only barren horizons of sand and silence. We see crucibles where humanity itself was tested, landscapes that stripped away weakness and left behind resilience, imagination, and unity. Every drop of water dug from dry earth, every ember carried across dunes, every chant whispered beneath starlight was more than survival. It was a step toward becoming who we are today. These deserts, once feared as prisons of death, became the hidden highways of migration, carrying our ancestors across continents, shaping the spread of humanity, and giving rise to beliefs, rituals, and stories that still echo through modern cultures. Their silence forced humans to invent language beyond words, their emptiness demanded purpose, and their cruelty forged cooperation that became the foundation of civilization. And so, the story of prehistoric deserts is not one of despair, but of transformation, reminding us that humanity's greatest strength has never been the absence of hardship, but the ability to turn hardship into destiny. The shifting sands may have swallowed countless footprints, but the lessons carved there remain, whispering across time that we are not merely survivors of the past. We are the children of fire, stone, and desert, forever carrying forward the resilience first born beneath those merciless skies.